The setting takes place in the main hall of the tombs of the Star Corridor. We see Geto and Riko standing. Geto then gives Rika the directions to Master Tengen, where she will wait in one of his barriers until the merger. Riko pauses for a moment, knowing that when she walks into this new barrier with Master Tengen, then her life will come to a complete end. Before she was able to sink into thought, Geto adds, or you can return home with Kaori. Riko, completely thrown off, looks at Geto. Geto explains that when they were given their mission by Principal Yaga, it was almost like Yaga looked at the merger as if something was wrong with it, like he didn't agree with the merger. At that moment, Geto and Gojo decided that if Rika decided not to go through with the merger, they will protect her future at all costs. We get a flashback of Geto and Gojo standing with each other, and they recite their famous saying that we are the strongest. We get another flashback scene of Riko thinking about her childhood, how she's been burdened with sadness and being lonely because she was the special one to merge with Tengen. Her parents also died in a car crash when she was young as well. She never had anybody outside of Kaori who took care of her. She always thought as a merger to be the escape from her sadness and loneliness that she feels. At that very moment, Riko decided that she wanted to stay with everyone. She wanted to travel, she wanted to experience the world. And as Geto smiled and said, okay, let's head home, Riko was shot in the head. Rico Armani, the Star Plasma Vessel, is probably one of the most tragic characters in the Jujutsu Kaisen franchise. Her story and character introduction was very quick in the Hidden Inventory arc, but her death was very meaningful to characters like Gojo and Geto. Their failure to protect Riko changed their perspectives of the Jujutsu Kaisen society altogether. Today we will focus on Riko and her journey as the Star Plasma Vessel. So come here, let's dive deep. The arc kicks off with Principal Yaga giving Gojo and Geto their mission and the details on how and what they're supposed to do to protect Riko, the Star Plasma Vessel. Yaga tells Gojo and Geto the two groups that are aiming to kill Riko. One is the Cursed User Group Q, and their goal is to overthrow the Jujutsu Society, and the religious group, the Time Vessel Association, and they worship Lord Tengen like a deity or a god. Geto and Gojo were walking, then all of a sudden, they hear an explosion. You see Riko falling from the building, and Geto immediately saves her by using one of his cursed spirits. The Cursed User Group Q made their first attempt on Riko's life. Geto and Gojo made quick work of the group and saved Riko. Riko finally woke up from being passed out after the attack. She instantly slaps Gojo and insults Geto's hairstyle. Riko looks Geto dead in the face and says, "What's up with those bangs?" That was the final straw for Geto, and Geto and Gojo pick up Riko and start twisting her in the air. We are then introduced to Kaori, and Kaori is Riko's caretaker. She's taken care of Riko since she was a child. Kaori lets Riko know that they are friends and she has nothing to worry about. Kaori was riding on top of a cursed spirit that Geto summoned. Riko asks her what is that and why is she on top of it, and Kaori lets her know that the guy with the bangs summoned it. Geto wasn't too fond of having that nickname, so he told him to stop calling them that. Gojo is confused and says out loud, "Why does she have so much energy?" He asks Riko, "Aren't you supposed to be sad that you're about to be a part of the merger?" Riko then starts to explain what the merger is. She says, "I am Master Tengen, and Master Tengen is me." Do the merger as if it's something as life and death, but the merger isn't life or death. My spirit, my will, and my heart will continue to live on even after the merge is complete. Before we move on, we need to dive deep on this panel. When Riko started to explain the merger to Gojo and Geto, even though she sounded energetic and happy about the merger, her eyes told a different story. If you pay attention to this panel, you can clearly see the sadness in her eyes when she talks about the merger, meaning she's not 100% believing what she's even saying, which makes sense, because Geto and Gojo weren't even listening to her when she was talking as well. After completely telling her life story to Gojo and Geto, Riko remembers she has to go to class. Gojo calls Principal Yaga and lets Principal Yaga know that he doesn't believe it's safe for Riko to go to her class. Principal Yaga tells Gojo that it's Master Tengen's orders to listen to all of Riko's requests. Gojo hangs up the phone, and Geto informs him that once Rika merges with Tengen, she will stay at the bottom of Jujutsu High forever. She will no longer be able to see her friends or family, so Geto wants Riko to enjoy her time. Geto expresses to Kaori and tells her that she is Riko's family. Geto, Gojo, and Kaori all stayed back while Riko went to class. Geto placed multiple surveillance curse spirits around the area to patrol. Mid-conversation with Gojo, Geto realized that 2 of his cursed spirits have been defeated. He looks at Gojo and tells him to go get Riko. They're under attack, basically. Then we get a scene of 2 off-brand fodder, the lowest of the low, sorcerers, no names. Who are these people? Appeared to kill Riko. Man has a trash bag on his head because he's trash for real. Gojo, Geto, and Kaori all rush in the direction to find Riko. Kaori informs him that she's in her music class, so Gojo heads off to the chapel. At that very moment, Geto is confronted by the curse user that killed one of his spirits. Geto made quick work of this guy. It was so bad, he made his life flash before his eyes and made him see his dog. But that was it. Gojo makes it to the classroom, and Riko's classmates all fall in love with Gojo and ask him to show his face. Once he shows his face, they all go crazy. They ask Riko if that's her boyfriend, and she was like, no, that's my cousin. Even the teacher tried to get Gojo's number, but can you blame her? Look at Gojo. Anyways, we're not doing that today. In the process of all the chaos, Kaori was kidnapped. The curse user's plan was to use Kaori as a hostage situation to trade for Riko. Gojo and Geto said they were going to leave, but Riko yells at him and says no out of nowhere and says, I can't trust you guys with this. Riko starts to cry. Well, not cry, her eyes started to water. Once her eyes started to water, she said I didn't even get the chance to say goodbye to her. If you remember, Kaori has taken care of Riko since she was a little girl, so that's the only family she's ever known. It was stated that Riko wasn't allowed to go anywhere besides school. Her being the merger, it was too risky for her to go around freely. This made her classmates and Kaori the closest thing to a family she ever knew. That's why Principal Yaga stressed to Gojo that she should be allowed to go to her class on her final day. Gojo then explains to Riko that if they take her, the chances of Kaori's survival decreases, so she will stay. But he did look her in the eyes and said, don't even try backing out halfway. We don't care if you're scared. Got it? Then we flash forward to a scene with Kaori reunited with Riko, Geto, and Gojo all headed to the beach. Next we see the itinerary and we see what the gang has planned and scheduled before Rika's merger. Kaori expresses how she feels bad that she was captured by the 2 curse users, and Geto reassures her that everything's going to be okay and it happened, and he also blamed himself for letting his guard down. Geto also explained to Kaori that going to the beach and sightseeing was Gojo showing compassion for Riko because she will merge with Tengen in the following day. I'll have to stress again, Riko was never allowed to leave the house to explore or go anywhere. The only place she was allowed to go was the house, and school, and back. So when Geto informed Gojo it was time for them to leave, and Riko got sad because she was having too much fun, and we see that she was bonding with Gojo a lot. Gojo looked at Riko and said, let's postpone leaving and going to Jujutsu High so you can enjoy another day of sightseeing. Geto stresses his concerns to Gojo because Gojo has been using his 6 eyes non-stop since they first encountered Riko. Gojo informs Geto that he isn't worried because Geto is with him and they are the strongest. The following panels after their conversation, to me, are probably one of the most heartbreaking panels that we have seen throughout this arc, and heartwarming at the same time. In these panels, we finally see Riko enjoying life as a normal girl. Riko never was allowed to enjoy life. The things that we take for granted, she never had the opportunity to experience because she's a vessel. In the last few days, with Geto and Gojo, Riko was able to gain an opportunity to experience life from a different perspective. She was able to experience life as a normal person. That's why these following panels are so heartbreaking. At the same time, it's tragic. If we revisit at the beginning of the arc, you can tell how brainwashed Riko was into believing that the merger was important and how she didn't really matter. She was just Tengen's vessel. That was her identity. But in these last couple of days, hanging out with Gojo and Geto, she was able to look at life through Riko's lens, not Tengen's. Riko found her own happiness. And you can tell because when Geto said it was time for her to go and for them to head to Jujutsu High School, you instantly see the sadness on Riko's face. Gojo was paying attention to details, and once he noticed the sadness on Riko's face, he extended their vacation, and Nanami was not happy. After that, we are now at Escort Day 3, Day of the Merger. It's 1500 and the gang is out front of Jujutsu High. And you guys already know what happens next. Big Daddy Toji pulls up, stabs Gojo from behind, and the rest of the gang escapes into Jujutsu High to make sure Riko gets to Tengen in time. Riko says her final goodbyes to Kaori and tells her that she loves her. And at that moment, we're taken back to the intro of this video, that very scene before Riko takes a bullet to her head. After Geto gave Riko the two options of going to the merger or leaving and being protected by Gojo and Geto, her final thoughts came rolling into her head. Riko explains that all her life being special was normal to her, that she has survived all this long by staying out of danger and just being isolated in her little box. Riko doesn't have any memories of the night when her parents passed, and she claims that she's not sad or alone anymore because she knows today is the day where she'll finally merge with Tengen. That was her way of numbing out the pain that she's been experiencing for so long, because she knew one day it will all just be over and she'll just be within Tengen. The next panel that we see is from the day she was at the aquarium with Gojo and Geto. And at that moment, she decided that she wants to stay with everybody longer and experience life. Till extends his hand and says, Riko, let's go home. And you know the rest? Bam, Toji shoots her dead in the head. And that brings us to the end of the tragic story of Riko. I blame Gege because he knows how to really make interesting side characters like Riko. But it's really the fandom versus Gege because he really doesn't care about our feelings, bro. Riko's whole life revolving around her being the vessel to that nasty dumb Tengen. What really sucks is later on in the series where we get more of an insight of the Star Plasma vessel. And before we continue on, this is a spoiler alert because this information comes from the current manga arc, The Culling Games. And if you're not caught up, this will basically just ruin your experience. But if you don't care about manga spoilers, we will continue down this path. This brings us to chapter 202, Blood and Oil. The chapter opens up with a panel of Riko. Yuki and the nasty dumb Tengen is having a conversation about the Star Plasma vessel. Yuki starts the conversation off by asking Tengen if there were any other Star Plasma vessels, not including herself. Yuki was also a Star Plasma vessel. Tengen answers yes. There were other Star Plasma vessels, but nobody had the same potential as Riko. Yuki basically asks Tengen why did he take the risk of not merging. As you guys know, Riko's death meant that Tengen was not able to merge into his vessel. So all this time, Tengen evolved into a cursed spirit, and that's why he looks like a nasty thumb now. Tengen explains that the merger only resets his flesh. So when Toji killed Riko, that only stopped his aging process because he's immortal. The issue is, if Tengen keeps on evolving, he can destroy humanity because they will be forced to merge with his consciousness. But he used his barrier technique to preserve his sanity, and that's why he was able to evolve into this cursed spirit and still be Tengen. Then Tengen drops another bombshell. He explains that no matter what, he was going to evolve into this state. So the merger wasn't going to always suffice and reset his flesh, meaning eventually the evolution process was going to go through regardless. Which makes you think, what was the purpose of bringing Riko into this? Yes, we know it will reset your flesh. Yes, it will keep you from aging. But at the end of the day, you are going to become this being anyways. Just like us, the viewers and the readers, Yuki basically said the same thing. She was like, so you just used this child for no reason. And she basically explained that if she knew of all this information, she would have sided with the Children of the Star. The Children of the Star are the people that put the bounty on Riko's head to stop the merger. But they chose to use violence, and that's what Yuki didn't agree with. But also, it kind of makes more sense why the Children of the Star were so adamant of not allowing Riko to merge with Tengen. I feel like they had all this information that Tengen is just now relaying to us in this chapter, that they knew about this from the beginning. Tengen drops another bombshell and asks Yuki if she can hear the voices of the other Star Plasma vessel. Once the vessels merge with Tengen, Tengen can't hear their thoughts or anything. Their consciousness becomes one with Tengen's. Yuki gets more aggravated and tells Tengen that he does not want to know what becomes of the vessels once they merge with him. Yuki basically hints that Tengen won't believe what the vessels go through once they merge with Tengen. And I'm guessing it's probably a painful experience, or they're stuck in pain or agony or something. Because she said, if I tell you what they say, you're going to get defensive and try to use old wisdom. And she said she's not going to make it that easy for Tengen. That hints again that something odd is going on once the vessels merge with Tengen. Because she said Tengen will get defensive once she explains it. And basically he goes, blah, blah, the merger is important because of this, humanity, blah, blah, blah. But he kind of contradicted himself in the beginning, saying he really doesn't need the merge because he can preserve his sanity. So it would have just been a back and forth, and you know, old people, Tengen's just going to use his old wisdom to defend himself. So she basically just said, no, that's my responsibility as a former Star Plasma vessel. I'm not going to tell you. And that was it with the Riko dialogue. Chapter 202 made Riko's tragic story even more tragic. One, it was the way Tegan just disregarded it, like, yeah, it didn't really matter. And two, how she really didn't need to die. All of that was for no reason. I mean, there was a reason, yes, you can argue that, but was it really worth putting a child through all of that? That's the question you have to really ask yourself. And I don't think Tengen thought about it that way. And that's why Principal Yaga himself didn't really agree with the method of the merger or the eraser. He didn't agree with it. Gojo didn't agree with it. Geto didn't agree with it. Kaori didn't agree with it. Everybody felt like that whole situation was strange. And chapter 202 kind of put it in perspective, like it wasn't needed. And when they merge with him, they go through more pain. So it's better off she died by Toji's hand instead of merging with Tengen. Yuki kind of made it clear that the vessels, once they merge with Tengen, it's not good. But once again, thank you for diving in with me. Next video, we're going to dive into Gojo and Geto, their experiences through the hidden inventory arc. Until next time. And how the hidden inventory shaped their characters.